Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Joining me today is Marshall-Weishuai Yuan. Marshall is an actor and the co-founder of Noah Films. He is also the co-founder of Diversity Australia magazine. Both of these ventures aim at promoting alternate narratives in Australia, mainly centered around ethnic characters and their lives. Marshall has also won multiple Best Actor awards for his work in short films, most notably in the short film Starving Artist. I'll leave a link for this in the description for this podcast. As always, I thank you guys for your support. If you are new to the podcast, kindly consider subscribing. If you are already subscribed, kindly leave us a comment and a like. Your engagement with my videos is the only thing that helps this channel grow. Also, if you haven't done already, kindly check out all of our short form content on all of our social media platforms. All of the highlights from this conversation and from my past conversations are going to be up there, so kindly do check that out. But anyways, without further ado, this is my conversation with Marshall in the Gap. So Marshall, do you believe in aliens?
I like to think so.
That's one way to slide right into the conversation.
I haven't seen proof, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
That's the first question.
Yeah. No, but seriously though, do you like the idea that humans are not alone out in the universe?
I don't mind it because when you look at the planets, like when you look at the stars at night and you feel like there might be a chance that there is life in one of those stars, it doesn't seem too bizarre that there might be aliens.
Yeah, that's the way I view it. Like, it's kind of like if you look at the scale of the universe and how many planets and stars are out there, just purely based on statistics, it is very highly probable there is something out there. Whether or not we make contact with it is
they might make contact with us.
Yeah.
I know some people, they say they're already among us, but
like what, men in black? Nah, don't tell that to Border Patrol, illegal aliens.
I read a book when I was young, and it was basically trying to be real life cases where people have experienced it. And I'm pretty sure I couldn't sleep for like a week after that.
I don't really buy the UFO stories though.
You mean the
like aliens have actually visited Earth or something?
Yeah.
I don't think I.
How do you know?
I don't. But you know all those blotchy images of flying saucers and everything.
The Area 51 and No, I don't either.
Yeah. I do like the theory that was posed out of Area 51 though, that if that Area 51 did actually have an alien landing in there, and a lot of our modern technology is actually reversed engineered from what they found in the crash site over there.
That would make sense. I heard another theory that apparently that they used it during the war. And they had, instead of aliens, it was like an advanced spacecraft that they made just for the war. So that...
Right. I did my research on you last night. Like, I watched... I watched Starving Artist.
I was
Starving Artist. I actually enjoyed it. That was actually really well done.
That was, I was going to talk about it today, so I'm glad you watched it.
How so?
Just one of the questions was just which project did you... I think it was... Which one did you enjoy the most?
Yeah.
Personally, and that was definitely the one as an actor. I personally enjoyed that project the most. It's been my favorite.
Has it?
Yeah.
Was it something that was coming from the heart, or was it?
Yeah. Well, Starving Artist. It's about a guy named Cal, and he's trying to be an actor. He's trying to make it as an actor, but he's also homeless at the same time. And basically, how the idea came about was there was a period in my life where I was homeless for like a few months.
Really?
Yeah. So I just left my parents' house.
Yeah.
And we had an argument, and then I basically lived in a tent. And at the time, that was how it was. And I was like, I thought about that idea, and I thought about actors and how they struggle. And I was like, how badly do actors want to achieve their goal? Like, what would it take for them would they live in a car if they had to? And basically just combining all those elements of my personal life and what I enjoyed doing, and the story came out of that. So definitely like a very personal story.
How far back was this when you actually had to go through this for yourself, when you left your parents' house?
That was around 19.
When you were 19?
Yeah, so quite a while ago.
Right. And being from an Asian heritage, coming from Asian parents, they would have had some very strong opinions about that.
Well, they were the reason why I left.
Really?
Because I felt like I was very trapped. When you're like Chinese and you have very traditional Chinese parents,
Yeah.
they kind of feel like they have like a path set out for you, and they still do it to this day.
Sure.
So it was very much like I want my freedom, but I feel like I can't get it if I live in this house.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it felt like they couldn't even allow me to move out. So one day I was just like, I've had enough, and then I just went.
Sure.
So yeah.
Contextualize this for me. Okay. So give me a bit of your background. Like, are your parents first generation immigrants coming directly from China, or like how does the story go?
Yeah, so my parents, they both came separately, but they both came around 1990 as from China.
Yep.
And then they met, and then they had me 3 years after.
Sure.
So I was born in Australia, but technically I grew up the first few years of my life in China.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Which part?
South China.
South China.
So
okay.
my mom, she's from a place called Foshan,
Okay.
which is like near Guangzhou.
Okay.
But basically how that happened was when my parents had me, they had visa issues with staying here, and they didn't know if they were going to stay in Australia. So they thought maybe they would go back to China.
Sure.
So when I was 100 days old, they sent me back first to my grandparents' place.
By yourself?
Yes, just...
Really?
So the story goes that my dad knew this pilot,
Yeah.
and they had dinner together, and he paid for the dinner and everything.
Yeah.
And basically, I don't know how this worked, but I flew back with them,
With the pilot?
with the pilot.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how, but that's what happened. And then I lived with my grandparents for 2.5 years until I came back.
Really?
Yeah.
That's some story.
Yeah. Because at the time
Yeah.
when I was there, their visas got granted
Yeah.
and they actually could live here
Yeah.
as residents.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, he's already there.
Yeah.
We might as well keep him there for like a few years. So
See you, Marshall.
no, it was wild because that means like for 2.5 years, I
Yeah.
didn't know who my parents were. Or I didn't see them.
Really?
Yes. And then also they had my brother while I was there. So when I came back, it was the three of them. And I was like, who are these people? So it took a while to adjust.
Yeah. And being back with your grandparents, that I'm assuming that would have been like a completely traditional Chinese setting.
Yes.
You would have been spoken to in Chinese. You would have been
Yes.
speaking Chinese yourself.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. So so I know two Chinese dialects.
Yeah.
One is Cantonese.
Yeah.
Because from the south.
Yeah.
You speak Cantonese, and my dad's from Beijing.
So he's got Mandarin.
So he speaks Mandarin.
Okay.
So there's a funny story that when I was with my grandparents, they used to play Disney,
Yeah.
and all of it was in Cantonese. So when I came back and I rewatched it, I would be like, that's Hamilton. But then the character would be like, I'm Clayton. I'm like, I think it was even for Simba or something. So
Okay.
there was that. So yeah.
Wow. And then you came back at the age of what, 3?
Yeah, around 3.
Around 3.
I also went there when I was around, I think 5 or 6 for 1 year to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came back.
Sure. China always fascinates me, especially in terms of immigrants, because as you know, China has always been very exclusive
Yeah.
in terms of like it's always bordered itself off
It has.
from the culture that is going around the world, right?
Yeah.
So China is not really influenced by whatever's going on in the world in terms of global pop culture.
Yes.
China has its own thing going on
Yes.
the inside. So that's what I'm really fascinated about. Like people who do grow up in China, excluding Hong Kong,
Yes.
excluding people in Hong Kong, like when they grow up, what are their aspirations? What is their outlook on life? What kind of like what do they aspire for?
Well, it's funny you say that because I have a cousin
Yeah.
who's 27 this year. He came to Australia, I think it was not last year, but the end of the year before that. And he's lived in China his whole life. So I was talking to him about, like differences between here and there.
Sure.
And it is so true where they don't really have access to the information we have. And the reason why he came to Australia was because he felt like his life was very like there was too much control in it, and there was a lot of like structure, and he just wanted to come, as a lot of I feel like people in his position, to experience freedom.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, how do you feel living here? And he's like, oh, it's so relaxed. It's so different. I can actually do something that I want. But I can't speak for everyone like him.
Yeah.
But I feel like there is a sense of that, of kids who grow up in China.
Yeah. So in terms of what you do,
Yes.
Like, can a kid growing up in China have an aspiration of being an actor, even in China?
I think there's a very small chance.
Like, what is Chinese entertainment like? What are Chinese movies like?
Well, my dad has a friend who's actually an actor in China.
Okay.
He's a known actor.
Okay.
And 3 years ago or 4, we went to his house.
Okay.
And he's got a daughter a bit younger than me, and we just started talking. And basically, it feels very much like for acting in China, if you have money or if you have the time,
Yep.
then that's something that you could do.
Sure.
Whereas maybe the general population,
Yeah.
most of them would not aspire to do a job like that.
Because growing up, there are a few very exceptional Chinese movies that do come to my mind, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yes.
Right. I saw that
Yes.
growing up. Kung Fu Hustle.
Yes.
I loved Kung Fu Hustle. Like Kung Fu Hustle, I believe was one of the best martial arts comedies that I have ever seen. And to this day, it is one of the best martial arts comedies ever made.
Yeah.
The way it was made.
Yeah.
Shaolin Soccer.
Shaolin Soccer, yeah.
The same that was the same
Steven
guy.
Depp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So China, what I'm saying is that China did have the propensity of coming up with these
Yes.
novel ideas and executing them really well. Because if you look at, I believe Kung Fu Hustle would have been released early 2000s, 2002, 2003.
Yeah, around that time.
And around that time, the CGI used
Yes.
in
was-
Kung Fu Hustle, it was insane
Yeah.
for what was available in the market at the moment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like because for the past, I'd say 4 years, I've really gotten into Chinese cinema.
Yeah.
I didn't before, but now it's like I try to spend once a month, I try to watch a Chinese film.
Sure.
And I really enjoy the old ones and even ones that go back to like 1980s, 1990s. And I noticed the pattern that they had even up until 2000s, like
Yeah.
you were saying, those movies,
Yeah.
was those movies had a lot of heart and they had a lot of them had a lot of rawness to them. Because I feel like when people think about Chinese films,
Yep.
the first thing they probably think about is like kung fu
Martial
or
arts.
martial arts. But looking back at them and some of my favorite directors, a lot of it was, I'd say, struggle. Because if you look at the history of China,
Sure.
there's a lot of struggle, even up all the way up until the 70s.
Of course.
You know, they had the whole thing with the Great Leap Forward, you know, the
Civil War.
Civil War. So a lot of the films are reflecting that time, especially a lot of the films that I really like. So it's a whole genre. There's a lot of different genres of Chinese films. And I feel like nowadays, a lot of that has been lost to maybe commercialism, where a lot of the Chinese films now you see are kind of like blockbuster-ish or
Are
they're
they?
kind of superficial. Yeah, so it's a very different feel from back in the day.
Sure. Do you feel China has any kind of intention on breaking out into the global cinema market? Like, because I asked that question not just as a way of promoting art, because China at the moment I do not think has art as a priority,
No.
but they want to use cinema or they want to use media as a tool to enhance their influence across the world. The same way America has been doing with Hollywood the
Well-
past 100 years.
From what I noticed is they're definitely trying to get into Hollywood
Yeah,
in terms of whether it's like producers
sure.
or even, I don't know if you saw the Meg 2 or even the Meg 1.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Like I know
It's
the
a movie
Meg.
about the Megalodon.
Yeah.
It's Chinese. It's produced by a Chinese company.
Really.
Yes, and because of that, they've gotten Chinese stars in the film, not as the main characters, because Jason Statham's the main characters, but as like the supporting main characters.
Okay.
And the settings are in China as well.
Really? Okay, I
it's
didn't know that.
Yeah, they go to a beach and it's in China. It's full of Chinese people. So they're definitely trying to break into Hollywood and try to do it through that.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what South Korea's done.
Yes.
Over the past 5-10 years, what South Korea's done. I mean, with the advent of K-pop, with the advent of like Korean skincare,
Yes.
with the advent of like now Korean cinema
Yes.
and Korean series up on Netflix. Like
Yes.
they have been the amazing thing about this day and age is that with Netflix and with all of these streaming services,
Yep.
it is now much easier than ever before to promote your country in a softer image to the rest of the world.
Yes. I mean, look what happened with Squid Games.
Exactly.
That was
What happened was-
was such a hit. And
Oh,
what
oh.
I find amazing about that is before that,
Yeah.
if you would to go to like a Western network or a Western audience, if you said to them, we're going to have a series and it's just going to be based on Korea
Yep.
and Koreans, do you think it will be successful? And most people would be like, no, because subtitles and whatnot.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, it was so successful.
Yeah.
But I feel like the reason why is because it had such universal themes.
Absolutely.
And everyone could relate to it.
Absolutely.
It's got the classism. It's got, people struggling when, like, if you're desperate, what would you do? How far would you go?
Sure.
It's got all that stuff. And
Sure.
I feel like in terms of film, that's what connects people.
After my episode with Sangeeta, she suggested I go watch Beef.
Yes.
I actually went back and watched Beef. Amazing show.
Yes.
I loved it.
Yes.
Yeah, and like I spoke to this about I had this episode with Mustafa earlier, and I talked to him about the German film All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yes.
And what I love about all of these is alternate narratives coming from alternate backgrounds.
Yes.
Like, it's not just the American story anymore. It's not just the white story anymore. It's a story from all different perspectives.
Yes.
I absolutely love the way that's going.
I love that. And yeah, the All is Quiet on the Western Front, we watched it. We loved it as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I would like people to know more is just the world cinema. Because when you open your mind up, that's not just Western cinema. It's just American or British or Australian. You see that there's so much more that has to offer because every country has their own thing.
Yep.
And some of them, like the ones that Singer and I really like, which is like the Eastern European ones. I don't know if you've seen Triangle of Sadness.
No.
It's a very indie film, but that director, he makes really great films.
That's out of China?
No, that one is, where was it? I think it's Swedish or it was Eastern European.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I've also seen that it's there are a lot of old like movies coming out from other countries that even Hollywood's like copied off, and Hollywood's versions have actually taken off, whereas people don't know the other versions as well. For example, like everybody knows during the 90s that Nicolas Cage movie, what was that? City of Angels.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody knows the song Iris, Goo Goo Dolls. So that movie really hit off, and not a lot of people know that was actually a copy of a French film.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
City of Angels was actually a copy of a French indie film, and it had the exact same concept of an angel falling down and falling in love with a human being. There was also a movie called there's a great Western movie called The Magnificent Seven, or something like that. Something Seven. The
Magnificent Seven.
I think the Magnificent Seven. They
I haven't seen it, but yeah.
They recently did a remake of that with Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt, etc. Like this was like 10 years ago.
You know what's funny? I thought that's the one you were talking about.
Yeah.
You're saying that was remade from an older one.
Yeah. So The Magnificent Seven with Denzel Washington is a remake of an old Hollywood movie of the same name and the exact same story. Yeah. And that movie was back in the 70s. Yeah. But not a lot of people know that The Magnificent Seven, set in a Western setting, is actually a copy of Seven Samurai. That is a Japanese movie of the exact same thing.
Okay. But maybe because I haven't seen it, but if I did, I probably would have made that connection. Yeah.
And I forget the name of the director. Like if I remember, I put up the name and the title of that movie up here. It's called Seven Samurai.
Yeah, I know.
And that had the exact same thing. 7 samurais defending a village against raiders, and being the ultimate sacrifice. So that's not a lot of people know about that.
Well, he's a very known one.
Exactly. He's one of the biggest directors to come out of Japan in history.
Well, do you know the film The Departed?
Yeah, of course.
So that is actually a film in Hong Kong. It's called Internal Affairs. It's a massively famous film in Hong Kong. If you pretty much ask anyone, they would know it. And they have a trilogy. And it was shot back in the 90s, I'm pretty sure.
Sure.
But that was the inspiration.
For The Departed?
Really? Because in Internal Affairs, it's about a criminal who pretends to be a cop and a cop who pretends to be a criminal. And they kind of meet in the middle at some point. And that's the exact same plot.
Amazing.
So I feel like a lot of Western cinema and shows, they use oldest things or international things as a source.
Yeah. It's all the recurring themes, isn't it? Like the underlying themes of betrayal and duty and honor and love and sacrifice, all of that. That is what makes it relatable.
That's how you connect.
Yeah. I can completely geek out about movies with you for as long as we want, but I want to get back to your story. So coming back into Australia, you were 3, you grew up. Obviously, you were at an age that once you grew up in Australia, you would have been completely influenced by the Australian.
Completely
you,
Australian?
Yeah, you are Australian, right?
Yes, I am.
by all measures.
Yes.
So growing up as an ethnic child,
Yes.
with those traditional family values at home, where was the conflict?
I think that the conflict was definitely trying to fit in. And
Yeah.
I'm sure with a lot of ethnic Australians, like I think people in general just want to fit in.
Sure.
And, what was popular in the playground was,
Yeah.
being Caucasian and enjoying Caucasian things like the food or the shows or the music. So I think the two worlds,
Yep.
the Australian side and the Chinese side, they were so different.
Yeah.
And at times it kind of felt like, oh, if I want to fit in, then I kind of have to abandon my Chinese heritage a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't have my Chinese food, or maybe I shouldn't even speak the language. And I feel like there's a lot of conflict within that, not just in terms of trying to fit in, but internally within yourself as a person, because you start to question, who am I actually? And I realized that with a lot of people in the same boat as me, that as you get older, it either creates more conflict or you just start to lose touch of your roots.
Sure. And the conversation around owning up your ethnic identity and celebrating your ethnic differences, that is only very recent.
It is.
And that kind of frustrates me. Okay, you never told us that when we were growing up.
Yeah.
We were always, we only grew up in conflict. We always being conflicted that what is being presented at home, and just think about the stuff that your parents used to watch at home when you were a kid. They used to watch traditional stuff. They used to listen to traditional Chinese music, or they speak the language, or the food that you're at home. And then you step outside of home onto the playground or onto school, and that's a completely different world. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, because I could admit that, like when I was younger, teenager, even maybe towards the end of my teenage years, like so many times I just wanted to be white, because that's what, if you in society and you want to be respected and stuff, that's what I thought, like you have to be like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I would just do things like, I'd dye my hair a different color and just try everything to go away from my Chinese culture.
I'll post a picture of Marshall's blonde face over here.
Oh, no. You saw it. Yeah, there were a lot of things, but ultimately it comes back to bite you, I think.
Yeah.
Because as you get older, you start to mature and you start to have more awareness of who you are as a person.
Sure.
And if you're being really honest with yourself, you would have to ask, why am I not connected to my roots? Because that's such a huge part of who you are.
Of course.
My dad, he used to have a saying, not anymore, but he said, you have a Chinese face, but you can't even speak the language. So something like things like that, like...
It might have been crude what he said, but there is an element of truth in there.
Yeah.
So basically what he was saying was that you can't deny something that is part of you.
Yes.
And nobody should.
No.
Nobody should. And it's actually, I think, the onus falls upon whoever else is out there, whoever is coming in contact with you, to see you for who you are, to accept you for who you are. Isn't that the same conversation that's around beauty standards now?
Yes.
That you should be happy and healthy, and you should be accepted and loved for who you are, for the way you look, for the way you sound, the way you appear.
Yes, I definitely think more people should realize that.
Yeah.
And also people from ethnic backgrounds should realize how beautiful their cultures are.
Of course.
Because once you do some research, like another saying from my dad, Chinese people, 2,000 years plus of history. It's very rich.
Very rich.
It's very beautiful. Like there's tragedy, but just all that culture. For one person to just push it aside or deny it, it's not good.
Absolutely. And in terms of history, like you said, I think China would have some of the greatest stories to ever be told, like war stories or stories about, like you said, the struggle with the civil war. China is a country, I believe, that is right now in a state of amnesia because it is in denial about what it is actually coming from.
Yes.
You're so hyper focused on growth and progress that you pay the cost of that by losing touch with who you actually are.
Yes.
Right? But if you go back into, like you said, the 2,000-year history of it, I recently got approached by this guy at the mall for that Shen Yun show.
Yeah, the show, yeah.
The show, right?
The Opera House, yeah.
Like, obviously, like I didn't go to see it, but the videos, the promotional videos that they had, they're really marketing that, very intensively. I see ads for that pop up on YouTube ads as well, right?
Yes.
But what I can see is that they've put a lot of effort into that. Like, that's not a small production; it's a huge production.
It is, yes.
Like the amount of people dancing on stage and the live music, the orchestra and everything. What that tells me is that China has people tend to view China as this rigid, black and white communist country that is, that does not have any depth to the culture that it is offering. But that's not really true. That might be the face of what China is right now, but not what it's actually coming from.
Yeah, I would definitely say there is a lot of rigidness, but in terms of that, like I said, the culture is very rich.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I feel like just with the terms of modernization, globalization, all that, them trying to do the best in terms of technology and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely changing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said, Shen Yun, that's where art comes in, because art is a very good way to show how rich something is, or like express how things are in the world.
So, okay, once you're grown up in around high school with this same conflict, did your parents want you to go down a traditional path of, getting a degree and, becoming like a professional, something in science or medicine or something?
I'll tell you a story about how I got into acting, because it relates to it.
Sure.
So when I graduated from high school, I didn't really get the best mark, but it was enough to get into university, which was the most important thing for my parents, because they said, it doesn't matter what university you get into, as long as you get to a university, we'll be happy.
Sure.
So that's what I did. I went to University of Sydney.
Sure.
And
not a bad university to get into.
No, it was great. Everything about it was great, except for the fact that I didn't feel like I had a purpose doing my course. So the course I was doing was a arts and science course.
Yeah.
And to me, it felt like it was just like high school all over again. You have your subjects, you do them, and then you go back home. I'm like, what am I even doing this for? Like, if I graduate and I get my bachelor's, what am I going to do after that? So I was doing that for 2.5 years. And then after, one day I remember thinking, what am I doing here? And then the second question is, what would I do instead? If I could do something for the rest of my life and do it every day and be happy, what would that be?
Okay.
And I don't know why, but for some reason, acting came up as an answer. I feel like maybe because I've always been a very creative person, even as a kid. I was always drawing, sketching, and I had a really artistic mind. And I think maybe that's what helped me make that decision. So that's how I came about acting.
Okay. You know what? I have this, what I've understood about all the greatest actors that have always been out there in history is that all of the greatest actors are people who always have a conflicted sense of self, who do not necessarily know what their place is or where they fit in. And then acting is kind of like an outlet for them to express themselves in myriad different ways, It's like a costume shop. You put something on, try it on, you like it, play around with it, put on something else. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
How do you feel that is in relation to yourself?
Well, to put it in this way, after I did Starving Artist, there was quite a few. There was a time in my life where I just kind of felt like, this is like, where is this kind of going? Like, I still believed in it, but it was kind of like the sense of it was lost. But only recently did I start kind of getting back into it. Very recently. And as soon as I did, I was like, this feels like home to me. Like, everything just came back. And I remember I was trying to practice a monologue and I was just reading it. And then the next thing you know, 2 hours had passed and I'd be so like, okay, I'm ready to do the next thing and just like do this step. So it's very much like a sense of home in terms of acting and just creating in general.
Sure.
And yeah, I do agree with you that the greatest actors do have natural conflict because that's what they use to bring to their performances. Because when people say acting, it's not actually acting. Like, you're not pretending to be someone. You're just being yourself, but you're bringing out different versions of yourself.
Yeah, obviously. of course. Do you follow method?
I do.
Do you?
I do. And I did that for Starving Artists, actually. I lived in the car for a week.
Wow.
I wouldn't say I'm full method, but if I get a role, I try to do as much as I can, depending on the character, to experience what this character is experiencing. As much as I can.
Sure. Yeah, you have to justify it. You know.
Yeah. Everyone has their own method, and I think that method can be a bit dangerous sometimes. If you would have seen The Dark Knight.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so Heath Ledger, he was pretty method. And with the Joker, I would hear stories that he would go into a dark room, put the makeup on, start talking to himself. I don't know if that's what he did, but I wouldn't be surprised because that is kind of very method acting. So you do have to be careful in terms of how far you're willing to take it. Daniel Day-Lewis is another known example.
Love the guy.
He's really method. And again, I don't know if it's true, but he doesn't do roles every single year because every time he finishes a role, it's so like he's so in the head of the character because he's done so much research and so much method acting that he needs some time to actually just take it down and just be himself again. So,
Yeah, I get it. You need some time away from all of that.
Yes.
To get your needle back to
Yes.
the center point.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of like being a starving artist, like you said, being an actor and deciding to go down that path, that okay, instead of doing a university degree, I'll try my hand at acting, and this is something I really enjoy. This is I'll give it my all, and I'll try to make something for myself in there. Now, in order to be a good actor, you have to open yourself up to vulnerability.
You do. Yes.
You have to be very sensitive in order to get into character or perform to the best of your ability, right?
Yes.
But then the actor's life also comes with a lot of rejection. It also comes with a lot of hardships, a lot of struggle there, right? Naturally, and naturally, money-wise, that's one of the biggest concerns, right? Yes. How are you going to support yourself? So in order to handle all of that, you need to have a very thick skin.
Yep.
So how do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile the difference between the two?
Okay, so I wouldn't really say it's as much as being sensitive, but it's more so being the master of your emotions.
Sure. And
being able to pull that out when you need to, when the job requires you to. So like for me, I go about my everyday life as a supposedly normal person. But if I do get like an acting job and it's like this character, he's gone through this or he does this, then that's when you kind of pull your emotions out. But, like the vulnerability aspect, that is, I would say, the most important thing between an okay actor and a really great actor. Because, I mean, that's why we're doing it. That's why people pay us to do this job, because not many people have the courage to show everything on screen. Like, if you tell people normally to be vulnerable, most people, they're really afraid to do it. But for actors, it's very much, it's part of the job.
Yep.
And really great actors, they don't care. They just go for it. And I think that's such a beautiful thing in terms of our craft, that we do get to do that. And we're not hiding. And also, I feel like we're also very empathetic of other people.
Of course.
Because we live in their shoes. So yeah, it's definitely like just controlling your emotions when you want.
There's one thing I've noticed is that with a lot of series, a lot of movies that are coming out these days. Also, the reason why a lot of podcasts are really popular these days, it's because of that element of vulnerability. Because in a lot of series, like in Beef, for example, the reason Beef was so good was they did not have over-the-top characters. They just had real characters showing very real emotions and going through very real shit in life. And that essence that was captured in the show, the same way it's captured in a lot of movies these days, like Parasite, for example. Right? So that vulnerability that is now being exposed to the world, instead of having this clean-cut and polished image that has always been on screens for the past 50 odd years, 100 years, that vulnerability is what is making great television. That is what is making great movies. That is what a podcast that has the element of vulnerability where you and I can just strip down and talk about, what is actually going on inside of you. That conversation has a higher chance of hitting off with people.
I definitely agree with that. And I think we're living in an age, especially with social media, where everyone is trying to show the best side or the best aspects of themselves. And I feel like we're all a little bit tired of that now.
Yeah.
Where we do want to see truth and rawness.
Yep.
And, you know, with Noah Films and the films that Sangeeta and I do, we always try to have that honesty and vulnerability. Like, not everything's perfect. Not every single character is, you know, like a Superman. Like, they have their issues. And the feedback that we get from that and the messages that we put out whenever we are very vulnerable, those are the ones that, like, everyone responds to it because they can connect with it. And it's like, it's just really human.
Yep.
As opposed to, our life is great, we're succeeding all the time. No one really wants to hear that all the time.
Exactly. People want rawness. People want a real window into what is actually going on.
Yeah, like Parasite, you were saying,
Yeah.
people connect with that family because they're just trying to succeed. Like, they're not like,
Exactly.
they're not the other family. But that's what makes it so relatable and people want to watch that.
I saw Perpetua last night as well.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
How'd you
I found it really well. I found it very nice. Like again, I thought about it because of that rawness that you talked about. That the character Arya,
Yes, Arya.
Right?
Yes.
whatever Arya is on the screen or on the phone or on whatever she posts, and then you see the other side of her sitting in the bathtub,
Yes.
you know, reflecting upon, or that scene where I think she comes up to her mum and she's really excited to tell her that I got this gig,
Yeah.
I got a photo shoot
Yeah,
call,
yeah.
but then her mum kind of, you know, brings it down,
Yeah.
tries to ground her,
Yeah.
and that shift in the emotion,
Yeah.
that's very relatable. And the final scene of another girl then watching Arya's post and
Yeah.
getting influenced
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah.
I think that was really, really well done.
I appreciate that. Well, I have to give all the credit to Sangeeta, who did an amazing acting job.
Yeah.
And brought the character to life. But the idea with the with that film was that we just wanted to show people that like it's not all glamorous trying to be like a model or an influencer. There is a dark side to it.
Of course.
And a lot of our work that Sangeeta and I do is we want to show people, you know, raw, honest truth, but also to the young generation, you know, we want to give a good message to them or show them, like, you know, sometimes this is life and there's hope, you know.
So while we're on that topic, like in terms of an 18-minute short film like Starving Artist or Perpetua, like that, what is the production time like for something like that? How long does it actually take for you guys to make something like that?
It takes a few months from pre-production to post-production.
Sure.
There's a lot of aspects, and it obviously depends on the team you have. Sangeeta and I are two people.
And it's just the two of you working on these?
We do have, like, when we're actually shooting, we do have crew to help us.
Yeah.
But in terms of planning and all that stuff, it's mainly just us two. And with that, it takes some time also because we act in a lot of our own projects.
Yeah.
And we take our acting so seriously that you can't just be like, all right, I made this product, let's do it in 2 weeks. Because for us, in our minds as actors, we're like, no, give us some time to explore this character and how they think and, you know, go back and forth between the ideas and stuff like that. And then when you actually shoot it, and then the post-production aspect, so the editing and doing the sound design, that also takes a while as well.
Yeah. I'm learning that the hard way. Like ever since I've started editing these.
I saw your story and you had the what do you use? DaVinci or?
I use DaVinci.
I saw your timeline and I'm like, oh, I understand.
You understand, right? The struggle and everything. But I actually think what I do in terms of editing, that's very basic in terms of all I have to do is I need to just trim up the timelines into one shot from the other. I don't really have to import. I don't really have to play around with, thankfully, the VFX a lot or a lot of overlays or LUTs or anything like that.
Yeah. I love editing.
I love it. It makes me pull my hair out.
Yeah, it does.
But I love it.
That's it. The reason why I love it is because the analogy that I always use is when you do make a film, before you edit it, it's like you're getting all the best ingredients, and once you do, that's where all the magic happens.
Yes,
you have all the best things, and then now you're like, I can pull this, I can pull that, and then when you're editing it, you're just trying to imagine the final result.
Yeah,
and the goal is always to get, I just want to make that magic and have people feel something about my work.
Yeah.
So that's where I really love editing. It does pull my hair, especially when it comes to, how do I solve this problem?
Yeah.
Oh no, the sound was bad here. we need to re-record that.
Yeah.
But it's always, in terms of the work that we do at Noah, the final result is always just, it's worth the whole journey.
And in terms of editing, I also feel that the more you do it, it's like any craft, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
With my editing for these episodes, I've gotten to a point that I've got a whole system set up.
Yeah,
So I know exactly step 1, 2, 3, what I need to do to get the episode ready, right?
Yeah.
The benefit of that is that I can get my editing done really quickly.
Yeah.
The drawback is I'm afraid to tweak the system.
Yeah.
Because you get so comfortable in the way you're doing something, you're afraid to try something new.
Yeah.
Even if you know it might make things a little bit better, but you're afraid of just putting in the extra time it'll take.
I would say, like, the saying goes, if it works, why change it?
Exactly.
There is that, but to a certain degree, that sometimes change is good. Like, it's just maybe even just trying something new.
Yeah.
And you think, hey, that actually turned out way better than I thought. So I think there's an element in that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the podcast, I think it's fine.
It's fine the way it is.
Fine the way it is.
Yeah, because I thought about it. I could spend 2 or 3 extra hours making the edit a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or I could spend that same time thinking about how to make the conversation better.
100%.
Because the final product is not the visual. The final product is the conversation itself.
Yes.
So if I figured that if the conversation is worth listening to, doesn't matter what the visual is.
Yes.
Whether you record on a DSLR or you record on a phone, people would watch it.
I mean, nowadays people just record things with their phones.
Yeah.
And people can connect to that so easily.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it always comes down to the message that you're trying to bring out.
Yep.
And how it can impact someone.
Yeah.
Like, that's as simple as it is.
Sure. So, like you said, every project takes you about like 3 or 4 months to complete, right?
Give or take.
Give or take.
Yep.
What does a normal day for you guys look like? Like, how do you guys keep busy? Because what I understand is in between all of these projects, obviously, you guys also have to work to make a living, right?
Yes, we do. Yes.
So how does that work? What does a normal day, what does a normal weekend for you guys look like?
Okay, so with us, because we are doing so many jobs, there's a lot to do. So when you think about making so even before we make a project, it's coming up with the idea and going back and forth. Like, we talk every day about film. Like, what project should we make? Why are we making it?
Yeah.
And how should we execute it? So there's that's the first part. So when we actually do have the idea, that's when all our hats start coming into one. So it's like we write the script, which that takes some time because you don't just write one draft and then that's it, It's never happened before.
Yep.
So there's time writing the script, but as we do that, we're also playing the storyboard, the shot list, how to make this look like cinematic or as nice as possible.
Yeah.
And then also, like I said, if we're both or one of us is acting in it, there's also, let's start the acting prep. Who is this character?
Yeah.
So that pretty much takes a lot of our time. And on top of that, like you said, we do have our part-time jobs and jobs that we do on the side.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone thinks that that's the main, but no, that's the side hustle. This is the main job.
This is the main thing. Yeah.
So there's a lot to do. And then when it comes to production, it becomes even more difficult and more challenging because a lot of things usually go wrong. But like Singir and I, we always say that it's not about how good you are as a filmmaker, it's how good you are as a problem solver on the spot. So I don't know if that answered the question.
No,
but there's a lot that goes on.
Yeah, of course. So what kind of projects do you guys have on at the moment? Like, what are you working on?
I can't really say too much, but we are working on something that's it's drama because that's what we specialize in.
Sure.
And this project, I would say it's probably going to be our most personal project.
Okay.
And hopefully it will make the most impact.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that the one about? If I remember this correctly, Sangeeta talked about this. Is this about the couple and based on your own lives as struggling artists or something similar to that?
It is based on our lives, but I don't know about the couple thing. That might be another project.
Okay.
But that was another point, which almost all our projects, they are quite personal to us.
Yeah.
And that's normally how we come up with an idea because we're going through something or we saw something that inspired us.
Sure.
and we just want to put that on screen.
Sure. I did enjoy all the stuff that I've seen of you guys. I haven't seen Social Murderer yet. I will, because it was multi-episode, so I didn't have a lot of time watching it yet last night.
That's fine.
But yeah, I will get to it. I'll post a link for No Films and their YouTube page. It should be on the screen right now. It'll be in the description for this podcast as well. Anybody who wants, do go out and check their page. These guys put out a lot of good acting tips in there as well. They put out some good, really, some movie reviews as well recently.
Yes, this year, Sangeera and I, we started our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Because a big part of what we do is giving back.
Yep.
Because, like when we've started, we wish there was more resources or more tips or people who could give tips.
Sure.
And, we always say, why just wish that something would happen? Why not just do it? So our YouTube channel, it's a lot of things, but it's giving advice to young actors or actors who are starting out or filmmakers that we've been through, but also movie reviews and vlogs.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things, but we're really excited to start that today.
Yeah. That's fun content.
Yes.
It is fun. Yeah,
Yes.
that's really. I saw part of the review you guys did for the Iron Claw.
Iron Claw, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
I haven't seen it.
With Iron Claw,
Yeah.
I think regardless of whether or not you like wrestling, you would enjoy it.
It's the
because
human story behind it.
It is, and it's one that it's family is a very big theme.
Yeah.
And everyone has a family.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have siblings.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I've got 2 of them.
It's about definitely the bond between siblings.
Yep.
And I said it to so I watched it twice. The first time I watched it was without Sangeera, and I said to her, you will appreciate your family so much after you watch it, because
Really?
I'm not going to give it away, but it
Yeah.
does tug at the heartstrings of that.
Sure. My missus and I, we recently were trying to watch this movie called Captain Fantastic. It's old. It's 2011, I believe, 2011 or somewhere thereabouts.
It sounds familiar.
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
But my missus hasn't seen it, so I'm trying to watch it with her.
Yeah.
It's on Prime
Yeah.
if anybody wants to see. So Captain Fantastic is about because my missus and I we're young parents, right? So it's mainly about parenting.
Yeah.
So Captain Fantastic is this really amazing story about this guy. I think he's like a professor or something.
Yeah.
And he's got like 5 kids, and him and his wife are one of those people who've decided that, okay, we're going to withdraw our kids from society. So they all live out in the middle of a forest and something, and they've built their entire, eco living situation and thing.
Yeah.
But then what happens is that the mother dies.
Oh, I see.
The mother dies. And then the guy, the father, it's Viggo Mortensen.
Okay, nice. Yeah,
From
he's a great actor.
from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
the Green Book. The Green Book. So Viggo Mortensen, he's the father. He has to take his kids now out of this setting that they've known their entire lives, and take them out into the world to attend their mother's funeral.
Wow,
and they have to come face to face with her mother's parents and his own family, who are disapproving of what he's doing with his kids. And these kids, for the first time in their lives, they come face to face with their cousins, and their cousins think that you guys are so weird, you guys are so different.
Man, that's a great pitch.
It's an amazing
the way
movie.
you explained that.
Yeah.
Anyone would watch.
Yeah.
That sounds like interesting already.
Yeah, and I watched it back in 2011 when it first came out.
Yeah.
But I want to watch it again now, because now as a father, I want to watch it again. That I want to understand. Okay, what's the internal struggle that this guy is going through?
No, definitely. Yeah, I definitely feel like with films,
Yeah.
it does happen where if you watch it and then you don't watch it and you come back to it again, you have a very different interpretation.
Exactly, because life has happened to you in the meanwhile.
Yes. Like how many times, here's a classic example. When you're a kid,
Yeah.
you watch films, like kid films,
Yeah.
and you think they're fantastic and they're great. But then as an adult, sometimes they are, but then most of the time you watch them and you're like, oh man, it was a bit cheesy. Or
Yeah.
The old ones, I find they're more like, they're pretty much the same. Like
Yep.
you watch it and they have a great message and you're like,
Yep.
I can watch this. If I have kids in the future, I can watch it with them. But sometimes like the newer ones, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah. So what was I talking to you about? Okay, movies. In terms of movies, right? I know that Red Lantern has been in the talks. Like even when I was talking to Sangeeta, that's you guys, the biggest project you guys have worked on, or one of the best projects that you guys have worked on, and it's clearly very close to you as an actor who was working on it, as somebody who has synthesized the idea for Red Lantern and the message that is behind it. When can we actually see Red Lantern come out?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that Singita was the one who actually had the idea for Red Lanterns.
Sure, okay.
It's very much, I would say, more so her project, but we both worked on it because it's meant to connect to everyone, not just the Chinese Australian, group.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer for it. It's on the Nova Films channel. But
Yes.
I was just generally curious about when we could actually see it.
Well,
Is it going to be
with-
screened by somebody by the Blacktown Council at some point?
They had a private screening.
Sure.
It was in the drive-in cinemas, so it was
Yeah.
it's a big screen, and we
Yeah.
watched the film. But in terms of when it's going to come out, so how the process works is whenever we make a short or a project, we put it into the festival circuit.
Sure.
So it goes international to different festivals around the world, and it gains recognition. Or some festivals they take it, some don't, and then after that, once we feel like it's gone through the circuit, then normally we would put it out.
Okay.
To public.
So is that where that is? It is
Yes.
at the moment. It's
At the
currently
moment it's there.
doing festivals.
Yes, and I don't feel like it's at the point yet where it's quite finished its festival run.
Okay. Right. Like in terms of the product itself, like it's finished, right? Like you guys
Yeah, it's finished, yeah.
Okay, it's finished.
Yeah.
You guys don't have to work on the edit or anything, like
No, it's-
tweak it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
So we'll let you know.
Yeah, for sure.
When it actually comes out.
No, I'd love to see it. In terms of being an ethnic actor, one of the questions that I do try to get out of this podcast for any professional who comes on in any field, especially in terms of your own particular background being an ethnic actor.
Yes.
What kind of advice do you think you can pose to any ethnic actor? Like you said, also through your YouTube channel, you guys try to give back.
Yes.
If anybody is trying to start out in the industry, what are some of the pitfalls that you can mention to them? What are some of the things that they can be careful about? What path can they follow?
Well, the biggest advice I would say is know who you are and just respect who you are as an actor, because especially with ethnic actors, like even especially back in the day, there was so much typecast going on, like in terms of you're a certain ethnicity, so you can only play these roles.
Yep.
Whereas if you were a Caucasian actor, then you get, instead of being seen as an ethnicity, you're like, oh, could you play the lead? Could you play the geeky guy, the cool guy? But ethnic actors is very specific. So in terms of that, how I see it is I would much rather keep my dignity than do something that I'm not very comfortable just because it's going to get me to somewhere else. So I know it's really difficult as actors when you first start out to do the projects that you want, because even me starting out, I just did anything. I remember the first year I was like, I'll take this role where I'm doing this thing. I'll do one where I'm doing this stupid thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get out there. And some choices that I made, I feel like I kind of feel like I didn't really want to do. And even when in terms of getting an agent and getting, oh, you got this audition for this stereotypical role, So I think it's very important to really think about what are the roles that you're getting? Are they going to help you, or are they going to damage your image? And is it worth it at the end of the day?
Sure.
So, with me, I create my own work with my partner, and I have the liberty to make my own projects and pick what sort of characters that I want to do. But if you don't, I feel like right now we're at a very good place where diversity is being championed in the industry compared to like even 10 years ago. So I feel like be patient, because nowadays they are writing really great roles that it's not just like you're this race, so you got to be a taxi driver,
Yeah.
or you're this, so you got to be a thug.
Yeah.
So be very patient, and also just really remember who you are as a person.
Would you advise anybody, like, because right now it's easier than ever to create content?
Yes.
Would you advise people who aren't getting the kind of roles that they want?
Yeah.
So instead of being typecast, just create your own projects.
Yeah, always. I always recommend people to create your own work when you can. It's not easy. It's a whole journey in itself.
Yeah.
But just to like have your own ideas and make them come to life, especially if you have like ideas that have a really great message, then that's really the best thing that you can do. But it does take a lot of work.
Yeah, of course. If anybody is interested in any other tips that Marshall or Sangeeta have put out, I'll post a link to their channel. Like I said in the description, you guys can go and check out their tips and
Thank you. I appreciate
audition tips. I believe there was one
yes,
one
we
video
did one
there.
on audition tips.
yeah. So I'll post that out there. Before I let you go, Marshall,
Yes,
there is one last question that I always pose to all of my guests, and shout out to Sangeeta, because I remember that I skipped this question when we were recording yours, so apologies for that.
What? I didn't know that.
I remembered it. Probably she wouldn't have noticed it either. But when I
okay.
when after we finished recording, I went back and I was like, damn, I forgot the last question to ask her.
That's okay.
So in terms of all your experience, like you said, growing up in an ethnic family, having traditional minded parents, who might have been disapproving of the creative path that you wanted to take, but then going on that journey regardless, finding your own way, working on your own projects, of all the stuff that you have learned over the years, playing all of these different characters and exploring all of these different emotions, Marshall, if there is one nugget of truth that life has taught you that you can pass on to anybody who asks, what would that be?
I would definitely say that mindset is everything in terms of how you go about in this world. There's a saying that your attitude determines your altitude. And to have a very confident and positive mindset and not be, disturbed by negative opinions or people telling you how you should do it.
Sure.
I feel like if you can have that, then there's a high chance that you're going to succeed in anything you do. And it always feels like the people who succeed versus the people who are struggling to, it really is having that positive mindset. Like even just waking up every day and just saying to yourself, I can do this, or, I'm a champion and I'm going to go and do these things today, as opposed to just constantly making excuses for yourself. I can't get this role because I'm in this background, or I can't do this because my parents think this. Like, you really do have to believe in yourself and have that confident mindset. So
one thing I would point out is that I've seen your Instagram, right, and everything. I do follow you. One thing I really do appreciate is that you're not really afraid to post stuff out there about yourself that, like you said, makes you vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
There was this recent post you did about the house that you had been living in for the past 5 odd years.
Yes.
And finally moving out of that space. And you actually gave us a look into what that place was like.
It was, yes.
Yeah, right? But the fact is that you were not afraid to tell people that, okay, this is part of the journey. This is where I'm coming from.
Yes.
And this is what has molded me into where I'm going.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that. Like it takes a huge amount of honesty and a huge amount of courage to open up yourself, like you said, to show the imperfections in the self.
Well, tying back to your last question, I guess if I could offer a second piece of a
Yeah.
second nugget,
Of course.
it would definitely be to not be afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they see vulnerability as weakness, whereas I see it as strength. Because, when you are vulnerable, you are connecting to people. And that's how everyone in the world, we all go through hardships and challenges, and we're all human at the end of the day. And the easiest way to connect to people is by saying, hey, I understand how you feel. This is how I feel. Like, we're in this together. So definitely don't see it as a weakness, because it's a really big strength to share things with people.
Beautiful. I think beautiful point to end the podcast on. Marshall, once again, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely having you on. For all of you guys, if you enjoyed the conversation, give us a like, give us a comment, subscribe to the channel. Also check out all of our short form content on all of our social media platforms. All of the highlights from this conversation and from my past conversations are going to be up there, so do check that out. Until next time, you have been listening to In The Gap. I have been Hussain, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.